Hi all, and welcome to this session about introduction to open source. Here we will be making you understand on how to make your first pull request. You guys might be very new to the open source. This is for everyone for who is just starting with open source or getting to understand how this works or what is open source. And the goal of this thing is be to get you started with making your first pull request in open source project. Hi, this is Shubhradeep Mohanto, and we will be starting off with this session now. First and foremost thing right now, like why are you here and what you will be getting out of this whole thing. So what is open source and why will we be contributing to open source at all? What how things are maintained in open source and how you can view this thing, interact with it, see how the files are, and from then on we'll be moving on to the practicals where we will be finding the issues, interacting with the repositories, and you might see that there might be some permission issues where you won't be able to make any changes, and I'll be guiding you to how to do that. And last, we will be talking about how to make the pull request and make your contributions count. But will that be the end for it? No. So I'll be referring you, I mean, just posting you some mentorship programs to get you started with, where you will be getting much more in-depth understanding if you get selected into this any of these programs. And I'll link them down below so that you're able to keep a track of it and understand how this thing works and how different open source organizations are working to make an impact and help you guys out. So let's jump in then. Before starting off with open source at all, I would like to say that open source is not free software. Many of us might have this misconception that open source means free, free software for all, but that's not the goal of open source because it has got its own licensing, because each and every repository that is there inside open source has its own licensing, and there are different kinds of licenses in a software. The things that we use that are proprietary are closed source, and they have their own licensing, and they're with the registered trademarks and all the copyright things that are there associated with the company that is developing or the individual that is doing. Whereas in open source, we can see everything and use everything, but there are terms and conditions of using it and redistributing it. That's like the mostly the baseline of how it is not free. So moving on to the next slide, like what is open source then? You're saying that it is not free, and you're linking us this logo which looks like an Instagram one, if you're familiar with what is Instagram. If not, let's then jump back in early 2022. So we have just recovered from a global pandemic. Oh yeah. And Instagram Reels are the most trending things right now. So why is Instagram Reels and how is it related to open source at all? Like I'm not seeing any connection. Okay. So don't think about any code or and anything at all. Just think about what is Instagram Reels then. So when we start doing a reel, we think about let's start and jump about some moves, and if there aren't anything and I have something trendy going in my mind, why not just create something and make people follow? So what I'll do is like create some song or choose from a range of songs that are available and have some effects added to it so that it looks flashy and blingy, and dance on to those moves and make the groove going, and you'll be having your own reel up and running. Now the baseline for this is like how we are referring to is like what when you're making a reel, you're using a song that has been already been created, or you might be putting your own original voice or song inside that reel as well. Could be anything. As well as you could be using some filters to make your videos blingy, and for that you might be using some filters that has been created by Instagram or might be created by some other user who have contributed to how this filter should look like. Now if you want to mix and match these things and create your own work, it becomes your own reel. The you have your own ownership of the thing that you just made, and that is completely owned by you, but it is dependent on some things that you've derived from someone. Or even if you haven't derived anything from anyone, if it's totally your original content, your original without any blingy stuff or filters or any songs that you've taken, so it's completely yours. Now what you can do is like you can publish this reel, people can watch through it. What you can also do is like you can release your own filters that you've created by yourself, and the song that you've sung or the thing that you've said as an original voice. And there might be people who might find it interesting and use it as a voiceover for their own reel, or the filter that you've created as their own uh, blingy stuff that they want to do. So in this process, what you've seen that you have created basically the replica of open source, how it works. So the thing that you do is like when you create a reel from someone's music, someone's song, someone's voiceovers, you're basically being dependent on somebody else's work that they have done. But whatever it is, you have created your own video and your own filter. So the complete ownership of the code and your creativity shines over there when you do it in a better way. And similarly, this is how open sourcing works as well. So open source is typically like I can relate. I'm taking the example of Instagram Reels over here because you'll be able to relate with it very easily and connect with it. So, and just like Instagram Reels, these songs and filters are like your dependencies in the softwares that we have, as well as the likes and follows are like the stars that we give in our repositories. And yes, you can create your own thing by building your own by. And there are so many popular open source standard libraries that are there, on which the modern world is currently built on, like the OpenSSL library and whatnot. Like most of the major standards that are there are mostly open source. And without open source, we wouldn't have been able to build softwares that are closed source as well. Like you might want to create a reel and share it among your friends so that they can enjoy it, but not release it as a public thing. That is a closed source thing. But if you want to open source, you want to make your reel public and show it to everybody else, you can do it, right? There's no harm in. So just like Instagram Reels, open source is the thing. Now you might be asking, like, hey Shubro, so why should we do my blood and sweat work and make this thing fully publicly available and free of use for anybody or everybody in the world? Well, you might be thinking that it is an act of charity that you would be thinking, but releasing someone's work or your own work might seem a little different than what it is. Like it makes a better like we make better software by having different perspectives to it. And we want to make this perspective an open standard for each and everyone, so that everyone is able to replicate it and view it and relate to it very easily without thinking very hard in their mind, so that it is very clear and concise when they just look about it. And the economics behind is that you might have known about a film called A Beautiful Mind. It is a film by John Nash, a famous mathematician, and it's an Oscar winning film. So where we see a concept over there that that contributing and cooperation is not a zero sum game. So if we all work together and participate in it, it yields a very higher return in investment that we make. And open source is just like that. So it is not a zero sum game. And when we contribute, it eventually sums up to and compounds to a very large impact that we are making. And sharing our work may not have like a grand strategy, or like your project that you might want to share does not have a monumental impact. But whatever you see inside in, like, you might be making an efficient program just for saying that how to detect if a number is prime or not in a very efficient way, in a very efficient manner, in a very less time complexity and very less space complexity way, then it has huge monumental value when some code is being dependent on the work that you have done. And when you go through these things, and when you see your code being used by some other projects, it really gives you a sense of satisfaction and all. But it has, as I said, like, there is a greater cause in have like giving your code and it can make impact in a huge sense. So if when you start doing it, it will come from your within that, okay, that this is what can be achieved, a greater cause can be served. And by doing this kind of thing, like publishing your work under open source license, helps you to make and encourage an open standard for each and everyone. Like when a project becomes an open standard, it becomes like a massive influx for contributions that are coming from outside. So it builds a whole ecosystem around it, and rapidly it accelerates very fast. Like if you see a project which is fully open sourced right now, which was initially developed by Google, known as the Kubernetes project, currently maintained by the CNCF Foundation, Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So they have raised an open standard. Different kinds of products have been built around it, and the standard they have been maintaining, it helps shape the future of how we'll be scaling our products and using it in our daily lives. You might not be knowing that the video that you're watching currently right now might be rendered by, it's mostly, I'm very pretty sure about the fact that it is being run by Kubernetes engine in the back. And the part about paradigm shift is that uh, open source has been a major contributor when it comes to paradigm shift. So mostly one thing that I can remember about is that when we fundamentally used to do some entity designs about how we should build a software from ground up and make things work, make a software work, what we used to do is like to make those entities and design how the domain of that particular system or a software architecture might be. And the go-to format for us used to be relational database. And most of the times it is the answer that a relational database, but things like MongoDB, Couchbase, when they popped up and they gained popularity so fast, now that they have revolutionized the concept of having a NoSQL database. Like databases can be NoSQL, and the benefits that we reap from this NoSQL standards is immensely huge. And this is what I'm talking when I say that open source drives paradigm shift. And the least thing to do from open source would be recruiting and onboarding members, because when you start a open source uh, any repository from your pet project that you have been doing, or some company releases, an organization releases their software as open source, like the basic agenda, like the primary agenda of their goal is not to recruit from there. But eventually, if you see, like when you see strangers who are like contributing to that project very regularly, and there is a business that you have built around your open source project that you're hosting, the chances are very high that you would be going to the person when you need some development work to be done, to go and hire the person who has been continuously uh, contributing to your project regardless of anything, or hoping for any return, because he already knows how the project works and the inside out. He has already been doing some kind of work in it, because and it is mostly out of their passion and their in their free time and in their own will that they have started contributing to this project without thinking about anything. So it's better to reach out to them and have a talk with them if they are interested in working with you. So that's it about why we should be doing open sourcing. Now, some of the great products that you are seeing over here are all built on open source software. And if they are, even if they are not open sourced, uh, they are built on open source software and they support open source. Most of the software over here and most of these organizations like Red Hat completely like most of their thing has been open sourced. Most of their configurations and everything. They have been the largest company in the software paradigm whose entire model is based on open source, and still they are able to make huge profits and all. And if you see about GitLab, Heroku, JBoss, Node.js, these are all famous organizations which work on open source, and many of them also works on free software foundations as well. And Apache is one of them. Like if you've mostly used web servers, then chances are very high that you have come across Apache web server, maybe a Tomcat server, maybe a web server. And if you're developing web applications, Node.js and NPM are the go-to standards. And I said about like Kubernetes few hours back, few minutes back, and Postgres, Docker. So these are all open source standards that has been developed, and you can see the impact that these products have done, the impact that has been made in our lives. So it has always been started with something very small, and this grew at such a large scale. So you can think of never think of your project as small or remaining. Always be encouraged that if your thing is great, if you're maintaining your project well, it is surely to get noticed by somebody else, and you're surely to meet like-minded people, because that is where everyone like yourself is contributing, is finding just like-minded people like yourself. So moving on to like SCM or VCS. So coming on to this topic will be like, what is SCM or VCS, and what is Git anyways? So a source control management system, or a software control management system, some might say, is like a versioning tool that we use to version our work that we are doing. So let's say like I have done some work today, like I'm just explaining to you what is a versioning control system. So a versioning control system is like, if you want to do a work and you want to save that work, so you just save it and click on save and edit that work, save that file on the disk and just give it a go. Now let's say you've made some changes on it to the next day and you want to save that version as well. But what you also want to do at the same time is that you don't want to lose the previous version that you've already worked on. So what you do is like you make a copy of the file that you've previously worked on, and then create another copy and save the work that you've done for today, so that you've got 1 point for the work that you've done yesterday and 1 point for the work that you've done today. So that if anything goes wrong with the work that you've done today, if this thing fails and it goes down, you still have the version that was still working yesterday, which was fine and all. So you go to this version, check what has gone wrong from this version to this version, check the delta, like the differentiation between the changes you have made, and you fix those bugs. This is how like you maintain different versions. So this is yesterday's version and this is today's version. And if you're thinking about a small thing like a document or a file, like a one file or 3 files, 10 files, it might be easy for you to track. But by doing this kind of versions for each day of the work that you're doing, or each point at which you want to save a work. Now, the problem comes when you try to scale this thing. So there are so many files that you right now want to work with, and this is becoming cumbersome when you want to keep a version of each point of time where you want to save a file. It can be like you want to save a point 10 times a day at certain points, so you create 10 different files of the same work that you've been doing just to create something. That is why the version control systems have been developed. So what a version control system does for you is like it saves these points that you want to commit to, or you want to, let's say, save a point in your file where you might want to go back to at some point of time, and as well as maintain the versions that is already been created as well as all the previous ones. So this helps in keeping our repository clean, as well as saves a lot of memory space in our disk, because having each copy of the file takes a lot of amount of space, and eventually when you try to scale it, it doesn't work. That is why version control system have come up to help you with these things, the issue for versioning. And there are different kinds of versioning tools that are available. One is Git, there is Apache Subversion, SVN, there is Mercurial, there's TFS, which is now renamed to Azure DevOps Server, there's Perforce, and there are many others that have been using in different organizations and by different individuals to version their work. It's just not about open source. You can version any file in your computer using these versioning tools. One might be the better option to do for some kind of file. And the most popular popular versioning for doing open source projects has been adopted as Git, because you can see in my title that SCM and VCS is Git. Because there's a reason behind it, because most of the open source project is being hosted as a Git in a popular website called as GitHub. There's alternatives like GitLab and all, but this is the most de facto website, GitHub, where most of the open source libraries are there. And there are organizations that uses other kinds of repositories for their version control, such as Mozilla. If you have been using their browser Firefox, so Mozilla is a open source organization. All the code that you see in Mozilla are all open source, and you can contribute to it. And their versioning system, their preferred versioning system, is done using Mercurial. And Perforce is mostly used by game development companies, where they usually deal with very large files, because if you see like Git, SV, and Mercurial, these versioning systems are not specifically good when dealing with binary files like documents, images, videos. If you want to version this kind of files, it is Git and SVN are generally not preferable, because they're not that good at handling with blob files. And if you're not familiar with any of this versioning tool, because most of them, like all of them, are always command line, but there are GUI alternatives for each of the VCSs that we see over here listed. So don't worry, don't be overwhelmed with the things that we are going through right now. These are just to give you a basic exposure and overview of what are the different things that are available, and why are we preferring to use Git other than SVN, Mercurial, and DFS. Oh. So how many languages do you need to know to communicate with the rest of the world? So when you're talking about open source, you're saying that you will be interacting in an open platform with each and every one. So how many do you think do you need to know to interact with the world that you see around? Like, there are people from different regions, different time zones, different ethnicity. So how do you think are you going to communicate with them if you don't know their language? So how many languages do you need? You, my friend, just need one language to speak, because you may speak different languages, but your code does speak one language, right? In the sense, like, you might not be writing, there are like thousands of coding languages that are available, but there is some like a standard coding language that you might be using, because you don't want to contribute to some coding language and that you don't know or you're not familiar with, right? So when you're coming to contribute in code, there is specifically a language that you choose for yourself that you're comfortable with, right? Just like you have a mother tongue and you're comfortable speaking in your mother tongue, you have a code language which you're always comfortable in, and you go to comfortable language to write your code in. Now, just to make a few things clear over here, that your contributions doesn't necessarily need to be in a code. Like, you don't need to know how to code in order to make a contribution in open sourcing. This is very like this needs to have some awareness, in the sense you don't need to learn coding in order to contribute to open source. Like, people have this kind of misconception in their self, that in order to start contributing to open source, they need to be know one of the coding languages very perfectly and with very good perfection. So open source is not like your Stack Overflow questions. If you like give post a question which is very silly in Stack Overflow, you might get freed up by the community people who are watching there. But I can tell you by guarantee that open source community members are the best people that you might come across. Like, the people over there are so warm and welcoming, and they will always be able to help you. Just take some time, don't rush in, don't start bugging them and spamming their DMs. Just wait for a few time. After you just try to communicate with them, they will come up with a response for sure. Like 99% of the times they will come up with a response. And if they are not able to help, they'll guide you to some person who will be able to help you and resolve your query. So again, just to clear things up, you don't need to know coding in order to contribute to open source. Just in case if you're afraid of coding. So you might be thinking, okay, so you know one of the languages, but open source is filled with so many technologies and so many programming languages. Like, are you thinking like, okay, so I'm using Java, I am very proficient in it, but will I find projects, or is there any interesting project that interests me in Java? That is a very good question, but mostly all of the times there are some projects which are in your languages. If you want to name any of the programming language that you have, I'm sure most of them will have some or the other form of open source project. It can be a kernel driver program, it can be a website, it can be a CMS, it can be a database, name it. Anything that you want in most programming languages you can find. And you can even find just configurations that you want to have, like pretty straightforward YAMLs inside your as an open source project. Like, if you want to set up an Apache web server, if you want to set up a MySQL server in a master slave configuration, so just for that you can have an open source project that, hey, like, I shine in this thing, so can I contribute? Is there, like, you see, there is a documentation that you can help. Like, you love to write blogs and technical and stuff about how, and you think you understand that thing, but you don't know how to code in that language, but you really do understand. So you can help improve the documentation of the of that project. You can increase, like, having some API documentation and telling in simple and plain English, like what it does, and write about it, what can be implemented with it, and what are the use cases. So don't be always limited to your programming language. And if you find some project interesting, try to, like, if you have been using MySQL server and you want to expand your knowledge on how this MySQL server is working and how these configurations are done, so you can dig into the code and see, like, how it is being done. And if you understand it well and you see there is no relevant documentation that is available, for the thing that you've been trying to understand, you can just write your own documentation and submit a pull request. Like, it might sound so easy for me to tell you, but once you start doing it, it's that thing just automatically comes up from yourself, like, okay, if I want to do it, I can find it over there. Like, it just goes around in your head like a map, because as I mentioned earlier, because open source sets a standard for each and every one of us, so that it is very easily accessible to each one of us. Okay, so before moving on to the mentorship programs, I want you guys to start doing, and let's make our first pull request right now. Okay, so the thing that we'll be doing first is like going to github.com, and when you sign in using GitHub, you will be able to see a sign in page, a sign up page. So just go to sign up, and you can enter your email and continue this process. So I already have my account made. I can just sign in right into it by providing my username and email address. And I'll end up in this page, which is my home page. And here I can see all the activities and the related things that might pop up. Okay. So here you can find about what are the things that we can be doing in the sense. So coming back to this project, which we have over here, is like the homepage of GitHub. The reasons why I chose GitHub for using this demonstration is because to make you familiar with this interface and how to make your first pull request in GitHub. This concept of pull request might be called something else in some other website like GitLab, which uses the term called merge request instead of pull request. So don't get confused with it. And why is it called pull request? So we'll be getting to that part, but because it is mostly from, it is considered as a code pull from one repository to another, or from one branch to another. In our version control, it is termed as pull request. So coming to this part of how to get started with playing this thing. So first part for us will be to find an issue. So what you might be thinking, like, what is an issue? Like, why should I be finding an issue to get started with an open source contribution? So issues are generally like tickets or bugs that we create in our logging systems to start working with. This helps us in organizing a project and to understand what the current direction the project is going forward, what are the milestones, and what is the roadmap that this project is currently following. Now you might find different repositories like this one, which is Eclipse OMR. Now you see this is a repository which is being maintained. Now, if you just can relate to the previous example which I have given of Instagram Reels, so you can see over here watch, fork, and star. This watch things looks pretty similar to Instagram, but it is not. Like, watching a program, like watching a repository, is like following the all the activities that are going inside the repository, just like releasing a new issue, an activity on some issue, a pull request that has been made by some contributor, any changes that are being made, any suggestions that have been created. So all these things are pushed to your notifications as email, or if you want, as if you have the GitHub app, you can get those inside the application as well. So watching is like following, and forking, I'll be coming to that. And stars, you can see stars over there. So stars are just like likes that we put in our reels. So a star means you like the project, it's you liked it. So, and these are like pretty numbers which demonstrates why, if a project is popular or not, and how many people are using it already. And here we go, you can see pretty much this is like the code base of the project. There are different folders, then script, tools, utils, thread, and these are different files that you go through. And the first and foremost thing when you see an open source project, you will be seeing a README. And this README helps you to understand like what is this project about. It will give you a very brief overview of what is this project about, and different kind of statistics around of this project, if how like the version it has been doing, documentation, how it can, you can provide maybe a quick start guide of how to get started with it, what is the goal, what is the current roadmap, the licensing types, the community that revolves around it, if you want to contribute to it, how to do that, and how to use that software, as I mentioned. So basically, README should consist of these many points inside, and all good, well-maintained repositories in GitHub or in as an open source project has a README and should contain these points. And one of the thing, after understanding this a project or README, you can select, just go over to the contributing page. So, and you can check this, this will guide you to another file, which is contributing.md, which you can find from here as well. Just like readme.md is a file, contributing.md is also a file that is mostly maintained by open source project. This is just like the open standard that I was mentioning in my first slide. Like everything has been standardized so that you get a very smooth transition into understanding this thing when you're jumping from one repository to another just to find your own interested one. So you can see how to work with, how to start contributing to this Eclipse OMR repository. So this project is like a very good, well-maintained Git repository that has been given. So you can see like it welcomes you to this project and thanks you for like opening this file and putting your interest in it. And it even lists you to a crash course that you can complete if you're totally new to Git and unfamiliar with it. Just because this is like you can start your pull request without learning it, but it is highly recommended that you get familiar and used to this whole Git ecosystem and the different commands to it if you are new to it. So you can just click on it and see what is basically that they have been referring to in the as a crash course. So this they ask you to, what are the different types of things that you would be needing to set up Git and configure Git, what are the GitHub commands. So you can see all the types of how OMR is being developed as a using Git and GitHub, and the whole structure of it, how to create forks and what forks are, how to create new branches. So this project, I believe, gives you an absolute benchmark on how an open source project must be maintained. You can see, like, you can just follow line by line and get familiar with it and understand the basics of how to do Git and how to get started with this project and start contributing to it. But this is all about the project and the repository that we have been doing. And the first part of us was to find an issue about the project that interests us. So coming back to this whole uh, homepage that we have over here, you might find a tab called issues in the top part. So you can, if you just click on this thing, you will be seeing that the issues that has been either been created by you and is open. So this is a search parameter that has been set by default by GitHub, and this shows the various kind of issues that I have raised or I'm associated with it. Okay. Now what you want to do is, like, this GitHub search is such a powerful tool, and you can use this to find your own personal preferences of, or your own personal types of projects that you might be interested in. So what you particularly need to find is that you just remove the last two parameters. This can vary. You can see these are the parameters of searching. You can just select as, like, let's say you want to search issues in whole of GitHub, in all of GitHub, and search issues which are related to a project that has a major part of it as a Java, because I am mostly interested in Java as a programming language. I want to select language as Java. So what this just did is that from whole of GitHub, which GitHub indexes in the backend, this is showing me all the open issues that are in Java. Okay. Now, what you basically want to do when contributing to GitHub any actions is, like, now you need to find an issue which you think is workable for you. So if you just try and check from this as, and this red things and all these ones that you see are basically called labels. So labels helps you to understand what a particular issue is about. Right now you can see that this issue has been labeled as a bug, and there's a whole description that has gone behind it, and this user Scott Tish has enlisted all the files about how to reproduce this issue and what is the expected behavior and all. So if you want, you can just go around and solve this issue. You can start interacting and say, like, hi Scott, I just saw this and found this interesting. Can you please make it? Just post it. So what this does is, like, you can start interacting with the issue owner, and this will help you get started with it, and they will initially start a conversation with you, most probably. Just don't spam them. Use it to interact it and understand the thing. If you found, if this is not the most exciting thing that you want to work on, there's no issue. As you can see, there are more than millions of issues that are open right now that requires your contribution. So finding your interest from this millions of issue is still not the best and the most ideal thing. That, like, there might be something that some project owner requires to do, which is very easy to do, but they don't have the time, so they got the issue in the first place, and they want somebody to work on it. and you are that somebody who is very interested to do it, and you're already familiar with what needs to be done. So perfect, right? But what as a maintainer they do is like they label them as good first issue. So this is a very good practice among project maintainers, that they label this issue as different kinds. So any issue that has been labeled as good first issue is a beginner friendly issue, that the project maintainer thinks that any newcomer would be able to start and contributing to that one. So just like similarly over here in Eclipse OMR project, you can see there are different tabs that can be viewed. So the thing that we'll be most focusing right now will be the issues tab. And going over to the issues tab, you can see that there are 718 open issues, and there are so many of them that might look interesting, and you might be able to solve some of them and get started with. But as you can see, GitHub is saying that if you want to contribute to Eclipse OMR, so nice of GitHub to do this. So if you're ready to tackle some open issues, you've collected some good first issues for you. So when you click this, what happens is that there's a parameter that goes like with a displayed as good first issue. So all these issues are good first issues. Now, this just shows all the good first issues that are already present inside Eclipse OMR. You can see the number of comments that has been made, the interactions on how it has been uh, communicated with and all. But let's just say you're just not interested in this project and you want to search all of GitHub to find that perfect project that you want to see. So what you can do is like add another parameter over here called labels and add your good first issue. Okay, I think I made some mistake. It should be labels. No. Yeah. So just to clarify this thing, so you need to have the parameter label, and inside that label you want to have inside it as double inverted commas to have good first issue. So you can just copy this thing and paste it in a search box. And what you can also do is like GitHub already does sort this 11,000 issues that you found in ascending order of the least, the and the most recently filed opened issue. So you may not need to sort it. So there are different criteria for sorting it, but you may not want to do that. And yeah, so I'll be pasting this thing inside the comment as a description. You will be able to put your own choice of programming language inside it and find the perfect one that just matches your Zell. So instead of Java, maybe you want to work with PHP. So you can find already like 5,000 issues on PHP, which are marked as good first issues, because the maintainer thinks that this is a very easy one to tackle with. Now, always remember when any maintainer marks their issue as good first issue, it's a very good sign that it's a well maintained repository. And if you go on in any of this like newest development, like it says that remove unsupported formattings, there's a description that has gone like we don't support aloha and all this thing. So if you're not able to understand by the description of the issue like what it is trying to achieve. What you can do is just like leave a comment, just like previous time, and ask the maintainer like, hey, can I take this up? And that's it. And along with this issue as well, you can see that there are various pull requests. So these are the pull requests that has been linked with this issue already. So looks like this has been already worked upon. So if, but you can clarify it if it requires some more development or not from your side, just to be very clear about it. Okay. Now, this is the way to go. For me, at least, I find it very easy to use this search feature and find the issue that I want to work on as a very beginner friendly thing. And I would recommend doing the same for you as well. This is how I started. This is how you can start as well. And yeah, so in Eclipse OMR, like this, coming back to this issues tab, what we can do, like after, like you must always go through the contributing.md file and try to explore all the hyperlinks that it has given if it seems relevant. Like if you're not familiar with Git, it is very well recommended that you go through the crash course. And if you're not okay with going through how Git works in a text format, you want to watch a YouTube video or you want to take up some course on Git, you're free to do so. But as I can see over here, this is how they have made you understand with graphical representation. So kudos to Eclipse OMR team who has developed this documentation. They have done a very great job of doing so. So yeah, very good, very good and well maintained documentation. That is why I love open source. You see, they have these standards and they all are built on top of that. Like anything and everything, most of the things you can clarify yourself just by reading and going through the repository. And README and the Contributing.md, these are the two files that you should be looking at when you're trying to make a contribution to an open source repository that interests you. Yeah. And so going on to the issues tab and finding a good first issue over here. So you can see so many things. Let's say I just want to max in code and have 2 children. Okay. So this issue looks like something that I will be able to solve. Like there has been already so many pull requests that has been marked. Let's find another one like this one. So remove unnecessary uses of kept optimization phase is complete. So there are 2 uses of code generated query. So whatever it is, you can go through it. This also looks like it has been already worked on. But let's say just you want to work on this issue. This is a new thing. This entices you, and you have written your query that I want to understand better what needs to be done, as this is my first time here. So if you write this kind of thing, like the most obvious thing that they will be doing is to guide you to this documentation first, and will ask you to read it and go through it. So that is why I always suggest to go through this contributing.md before reaching out. So I'm pretty sure, like if you go through these 2 files over here of contributing.md and this git crash course, you will very well be able to understand what is this, how this repository is being developed. And if you want to understand more about the project, you can definitely go and check out this README. These two things are very crucial to any open source repository. So after you have been if clarified, and also what they have also done is like they have given you the code that needs to be changed. So in this file, they said that this thing needs to change. So what you can do is like you can just go on and edit this file. So what you can see is like you are not able to edit it. So this button is totally disabled for you. So you need to make a fork right now to be able to contribute to this project. Now coming back to this thing, on point number 4, that you are now not able to edit it. So why are you not able to edit it? It is because this is a project by Eclipse, and the project is called OMR. And the reason you're not able to edit it is because Eclipse doesn't want you to, as because if you are writing a code and you're uploading it to GitHub in your own account, you don't want anybody to just come right in and change the code. It is open, but it's not open to be editable by each and every one. Like that would be catastrophic for anyone if anyone from the world can push code into your own repositories without your permission. So that is why this system has been developed. So what you can do is like, if you open the master branch of this file or any branch, the master branch or main branch in some cases is the one which is the default baseline of the project. From there, if you try to edit the file, you can see a pop-up has come up which says you're making changes in a project that you don't have write access to. So what it does is that we have created a fork of this project for you to commit your proposed changes to. So submitting a change will write it to a new branch in your fork so that you can send a pull request. So magic, what GitHub is doing for you is like, you just need to tell GitHub from this edit window, like what is the proposed change that you want to make in this project. Whatever, like I can make the 0 to 1 to 0. I don't understand this. I'm just making it for demonstration purposes to you. And you say like, okay, I changed this, updated the value from 0 to 1. And you can link to those issues that you've issued, link to the issue number like 666, addressing this particular issue, making a meaningful commit message. Right. So over here, you can give your comments and not feedback to it. But before making those changes, you might also need to check that some project maintainers would want their commits to be in a format that they would want. So in this portion that you see in the repository, they have the commit guidelines. So a well-maintained repository would always have these kind of things. So you can change your commit message to the guidelines that they have mentioned, and you can just voila, propose a change. And what this will do is like, you can see it is comparing the change from your fork to the base repository. So this is the fork repository that you see. It is named at obus OMR. So obus is my username and OMR is the repository that is created under my fork. And I am trying to merge a change that I just made, which I did over here, from my branch batch one to the master branch. And I wanted to create a pull request. Now you can always be sure to give a very clear and crisp title to your pull request and describe what you have changed, why you've changed, and what impact is it going to change. And always be sure to, if there isn't a request issue that is been already been present inside the repository, be sure to discuss this change that you're proposing with the repository owners before you make a pull request, because it's a good thing to do. Obviously, if it's a very small repository and you do not want to go back and forth, like it has got few users and you're very interested in it, you can go on and directly make a pull request and discuss your changes, why it is better, and what are the things that you're bringing to the table inside the pull request comment section as well. You can just go on talking about it. You can see the change that I've made over here. Maybe you might be seeing it in unified version, right, like this, but I prefer it this way in split. And yeah, you can see the commit that has been made over here as well, and the change that I've changed. So this is the comment about the versioning which I was talking about. So this is a point in the repository which I have made, and there are other few points as well where the other comments, other versions of this same project. So when I create a pull request, you can see this will create a pull request, and I don't want to create a pull request over here because I don't want to barge in all the 62 people's notification just for this demonstration purpose. So what I can do is, like, I can show you how an existing pull request just look like. So you can see this pull request which has been done by this user who has proposed a change. So you can see, like, the title of this pull request is very crisp. So inside CMake, he wants to fix a cross-compile detection. And he has refined the logic to allow the detection of cases where we are performing a cross-compiling targeting window. So what they have done is, like, they have changed one file, which we can see over here, and they've improved the logic over here. So what you can do is, like, as a user, there are some issues which he has already marked as. So this is still under process. As you can see, nobody has yet checked in. It has been more than a day, about a day, when this pull request has been raised, and this will be eventually be reviewed by the maintainers of this project, and yes, they will be providing feedback to it. So once all the things passes and people go and approve this project, like LGTM, so this shows that this is good to go, and someone come and will merge this pull request and add it to the code. You can see, like, already, like, more than around 5,000 pull requests have been already been completed and closed. So see, the same user has uh, made a change over here where they made a fix over here. They did something, they have described it well, they have changed the file, and then again, see, there is, as I was mentioning, that there has been a chain of conversations that has went with the maintainer of this project, which I think it's Keith. And see, Oxford, this user has given a go ahead and approved these changes and has merged them inside the code. And you can see this change that they have made inside our main code repository. So this is like the complete journey of how a pull request should be made, and in a very precise and crisp manner. If you follow these things and do it, I'm sure like this will be very easy to go. There are yeah, I'll be coming to those part on how there are different programs which are being driven by companies who benefit from this kind of open source development, and they want to give back to the community, just like yourself, how you were interested in open sourcing. So just like it, as mentioned, after making a pull request, you need to wait for the suggested changes and get it approved and get it merged. That will be making a first pull request. So, and then moving on to the next slide will be the mentorship programs, which I've been talking about. So these are the list of some of the mentorship programs that many organizations are providing, and many are open source friendly. They are open source organizations, and some organizations are supporting open source because they are very well benefiting from the work that has been done in open source. So Google Summer of Code, Outreach, MLH Fellowship. So all these kind of programs, I'll just link them down in the description below. That these things, these programs help a student or anybody who is interested in following up with a mentorship to get started with these programs, get started with open sourcing. So they will guide you, they'll teach you. You just need to have that zeal, that enthusiasm to start contributing to it. And I'm sure that there are people that who are out there sitting to find people enthusiastic, just like yourself, to get into these things. And the rewards are very high for this. Like most of this program over here they pay stipends and for this fellowships and mentorships that they're offering, and you can reach out to them. You can see the timeline from there and what are the criteria, how to get started. So this is going to help you so much on starting your journey. You can see testimonials of people who have gone through these things, and different people like the Chromium browser, the Android open source project, the Linux kernel on which most of the world servers are running, the KDE, the Ubuntu documentation, most like React, Angular, these are all open source projects which are on which the world, the technology is now built upon. So be sure to check out all of them, if not most of them. And this should get you started if you're still not familiar after going through how to make your first pull request. But regardless of this, I'll always encourage you to do so. So yeah, good luck and go and make some impact and make your first pull request. And always remember, try to reason good when you're writing the title, the description, and have some patience when you're doing your first pull request. Don't just bug in the maintainer that, hey, please review my pull request every 2 hours. So like most of the pull maintainers over there are contributing in their free time, so they don't get anything in return from the community as much. They're just doing it out of their own passion and love for programming. And avoid spamming and go on, spread awareness, spread it to people and send it to them, your peers and your fellow colleagues who are interested about open sourcing and creating an impact. So peace. Bye-bye.